have the privilege of introducing Katrina Daniels-Samasa. Here's a little bit about Katrina. Katrina's interest in cultural exchange began during her first stint overseas as an undergraduate student at Michigan State University, visiting both Cameroon and France, respectively. These travels, along with her studies in sociology, piqued her interest in interacting with people from various ethnic and cultural backgrounds. While continuing to travel, she obtained an additional BA in education and an MA in curriculum and instruction. In 2011, Katrina moved abroad, and within a year, she began helping other expatriates to acclimate to their new environment through cultural humility workshops. Currently, Katrina's focus is creating inclusion and belonging for staff and students within international schools and organizational contexts. For Katrina, DEI fails if an organization hasn't defined its cultural or understands its current climate. Working in both the UAE and South Korea as an international leader, workshop facilitator, and consultant, Katrina has been able to help leaders understand how to view their unique DEI, EDI journeys from a lens that best serves their demographic. Her multi-layered, multi-dimensional approach, along with her training in restorative practices, anti-bullying, and social emotional learning, has helped to shape her skills, adding to her toolkit of knowledge regarding issues of DEI that international schools encounter. During her time in the US, she served as a middle school lead, a team lead, and a special education senior leadership team link, but shifted roles during her international career to become a curriculum leader and eventually a DEI lead. Katrina has created various programs to reinforce the intercultural understanding amongst the staff and students is key to school progress. Her focus on cultural humility was essential in promoting positive school culture within various school communities she has served. Please welcome Katrina.
Hi, everyone. How are you? I hope everyone is fine. You all can't say you're fine, so I would just like to see a few thumbs up. If you're okay, if you're not okay, you can give me a thumb to the side. If you're not doing really well, you can actually put your thumb down, because we're being authentic here, and some days aren't good days, but we still show up, right? And so I'm just going to delve right in. At the beginning of this call, people or someone asked, what do we call you? Do we call you Katrina? Some people know me by Sunny, and my Francophone friends know me as Michelle. A lot of you don't know that either. And that's because the tra sound in my name, of course, is not in the French language. My middle name is Michelle. I'm Sunny. We do like many names in our family. My friends that I did not grow up with call me Sunny, S-U-N-N-E-I. You are more than welcome in this space to call me Sunny. As I said, when I'm out and about and I hear Katrina, sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't, because I know it's affiliated with work. And when I'm out and about, sometimes I don't want to work. So we're just going to delve right in and get started. So let me share my screen with you all. And that's a lot. Okay, so I'm not a big, I can't say I'm not a big fan, but I don't use Zoom as often as I should. So again, you guys are going to help me with your thumbs up. If you can see the slides, please put your thumbs up so that I can see. Yes, I see a thumbs up. Thank you, Alex. Can everyone see the slides? Yes, yes. No?
I see your window, but I don't see a slide.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed. Okay, so here we go. Now, can you see it now? Yes.
Yeah, but it's like half your screen, Sunny.
That's
boo.
all right. Hey, girl.
Maximize it.
There we go.
There you go. You good now. You cooking with grease.
I'm cooking with grease. All right. So hearing Adrian helped me to realize that I did not start off with the greeting that we typically greet when you're from Detroit. So my greeting is what up, doe? That's
What
how we
up,
greet.
doe?
It's not hello, it's not hi, it's not bonjour, it's what up, doe? And if you ever find yourself in Detroit, that's the way that you let people know that you're from there, and you do want to do that. I'm not going to explain why. All right, so I am, you heard my background, and you know what AIELOC is. My company, my personal company is Involution Solutions. And I'm not really going to talk about that, but I do consulting work for DEI, but I really want to get started. So here we go. The biggest thing that I do want to say is one of the things that I do is empower organizations to create solutions through their involvement and their engagement. A lot of times, I think Kevin alluded to this, is that we tell organizations and schools what they need, right? Especially those of us who have been marginalized. At times, we tend to frame our DEI from our own feeling and perspective as marginalized people. And so we tend to say, well, this is what you need. And we have to start listening to the organizations first, right? As DEI advocates, as people who are on DEI teams, as DEI directors. I think that's really important. So here's kind of a list of things I do. There is a QR code there. If you scan the QR code, it will lead you to who I am. And if you are not a QR code person or you haven't done that, that's kind of the trend. People can just scan and save your QR code as opposed to handing out business cards, right? I also want to say, use this opportunity to network, guys. You can check me out on LinkedIn under this particular title. I'm not going to read the list of things that I do to you. It's not, I mean, do to you, not do to you. I'm not going to, because you all, yeah, it's just kind of a list of, it's repetitious, okay? Okay. And if I tend to speak really, really fast when I'm presenting because I don't want to kind of waste time. If I'm going too fast, unmute and say, hey, I need you to slow down. You are more than welcome to do that. I know there are people here that where English is not your first language, so I'm going to try to mentally slow down, but sometimes I need those reminders. So please feel free to say, hey, Sunny, Katrina, Mrs. Daniels-Samasa, whatever you want to call me, slow down. Okay, let's move on. So I always start with good news. Can I have 2 volunteers to unmute and tell me one thing that happened? And I can't, my screen won't let me see everyone. So just unmute and defer to whoever goes first and tell me something good that happened to you this week. Anyone?
I don't mind sharing.
Thank you.
This week was my birthday on Tuesday, and I'm at my new school serving in a new role. And I was warned that birthdays were a big thing at my school, but I underestimated what that really meant. And so here I'm doing carpool duty. Parents are honking their horn. Kids and parents are yelling out the cars, happy birthday, Miss Pacheco. Kids coming with tons and tons of flowers. There's a tradition of bringing flowers and an apple. I have enough to make applesauce. I have so many apples. I had so many flowers that I just kind of disseminated it across the building and all the workrooms. But in the end, I had this huge 3-tier cart full of gifts and notes, and all collected by like PTA parents came in for all of this. And I was really taken aback by how they've been very welcoming from the beginning, But if anyone walked into the building, they wouldn't have known I had been there only a couple of months.
Wow.
So I felt really accepted by the community in that gesture.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but and you're finished now, right? I'm so sorry if you're not.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. What I wanted to say is please take note of that. That's something that you can easily implement in your school if birthdays are culturally appropriate to celebrate. Making it a big deal, making it a big deal for students, for staff, for leaders. That's easy, right? That's a big part of creating a culture in the school. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. The rest of us, make a note of that. That's something you can take back and it's easy. Anyone else? One more, just one more.
I can share.
Thank you.
I have my camera off. This is Tawana. Hi, Sunny. Nice to see you. I wanted to share that this week we had a guest speaker come in, and I was struggling with trying to get a spot for him because, as you know, schools are busy places. Hi, Kevin. So some people, they have a hard time when their schedule's thrown off, or, you know, this person, we've got these other things to get through. We got curriculum, we got everything, but we had an opportunity to have a person come in who'd come to South Africa to promote and showcase his film for a film festival. And it was all around just storytelling and getting stories from communities where you're not just extracting stories, but you're in the community, you're working with them, you're giving back to the community. And I thought it was a great opportunity for my school, who has said they're dedicating themselves to JEDI or DEIJ work, to be able to engage with him. And he had so many amazing messages around fairness and equity and people getting together as a community and fighting for their rights. And it was around something that, or a hurricane that happened in Puerto Rico five years ago, Hurricane Maria, if anyone remembers that. And so just having someone outside of our community who is Puerto Rican, half Jewish background, come in and share with our community things around storytelling and justice and equity, and showing what communities can do when they pull together, and just ticking all of the themes that yes, Trump did deal very badly with that. Just ticking all of the boxes of themes that we say that we're striving for, but it took a lot of work to get off the ground. And I'm just glad that it was accepted in our TOK program, and that afterwards, after all the back and forth, the teachers were really grateful and they were happy that our students had the experience. So I hope that all of you working out there in schools, when you see opportunities like that, just push for them, because they do make a huge difference with our students and our staff.
Absolutely. So let's give a snaps up for both of them, to both of the ladies for sharing, or both of you for sharing. And let me just go over the agenda. So I'm trying my best to model the things that helps build culture. So I always start, typically when I was in the classroom, I would dedicate a day to good news. Whenever I start a meeting, we started with good news, right? Because good news helps us to feel good. So here's the agenda. I'm going to talk about the DEI journey I had at my last school when I was DEI lead, and then what I learned. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about culture and climate. And then I'm going to end with the online conference that is going to be South Korea based. So if you are in South Korea, this is something that would be of interest to you, or if you have worked in South Korea, or you know people in South Korea, this will be of interest. All right, so I did this visual representation, and also the words for people who like either or. I kind of mind mapped this out. So I'm going to just tell you how my journey started at NLCS Jeju. That's where I was DEI lead. So prior to DEI, as you heard, I'm a sociologist as well as an educator. and my background in sociology really helped to frame the work of DEI. As you all know, or most of you who are DEI directors or leads or part of a group, the work didn't begin with your title, right? You were doing things before you had this particular title. So mine started actually as a sophomore in school after I read the book Savage Inequalities. And if you're American based, it's by Jonathan Kozel. And I highly recommend that book because it really, and it's old now, but it frames the inequalities, the racial inequalities within education in the US based on our system and how we actually finance our schools. And so from there on, I did a lot of equity work before it was called equity work. And if you heard, when my bio was read, I was middle school special, I was senior team special education link, and I sat on senior team and I was advocating for students. My job was to really advocate for students who had, at the time, what we call special needs. So anyway, I moved to the my journey started in LCS as what they call the Cultural Awareness Link. We had a Cultural Awareness Committee. And of course, by default, I was chosen. And I'm just going to leave that at that. And so what it started off was global awareness, and the students really started to conflate cultural awareness and global awareness. And what I mean by that, they started conflating environmental problems with cultural and racial problems. So when I stepped in, I said, well, what we're really trying to do here is really focus on culture. And so I changed that. My second year as Cultural Awareness Link, they announced Mufti Day. I want to say this to you all: if you're using Mufti as dress down, please alter that language. Anyone who knows a Mufti is actually a religious cleric in Islam, and they are highly, highly respected. I'm not going to go into the history of the word and how it became dressed down, but the history of it is very negative. And when I read it, I was like, so we announced Mufti Day, and they have been doing Mufti Day for years at the school. And I remember as an American asking them, why are we having Mufti Day? Or what does Mufti mean? And nobody knew. So there were complaints. And the vice principal emailed the complaints to me as Cultural Awareness Link, which was very interesting. He emailed me and the Student Awareness Committee and the student lead. And interestingly enough, the students were like, we don't care about the word. It's not a big deal. We're talking about a demographic of about 99% South Korean students. So of course, they weren't affected. They didn't feel the negativity behind the word. And so I was like, we need DEI training. And I was made DEI lead because of that. So that's kind of how it started. My DEI journey began at the particular school. And nobody in the school at the time had been trained in DEI. I started my DEI training before they even had that at the school. All right. Simple enough. So these are the things, some of the things that I did as DEI lead. The very first thing that is imperative to me is making sure that your DEI team is diverse. I've seen a lot of situations where there's a diverse body of people in the school, but the DEI team does a poor job at representing that diversity. So tap into people, individually go to people. I did that. I'm like, hey, friend, you. And we ended up with this beautiful mix of people. So these are some of the things that I did. Of course, I led the diverse team. We had ambassador visits, and this is in no order. We had a diversity week. It was important that the Korean staff voices were amplified. When I arrived at the school, they had never heard nor played the Korean national anthem, which I thought was interesting. We did some empowering with the parents. We wrote a school DEI policy. We trained students on DEI. We brought in diverse speakers. And if you see at the bottom there, I have in red, wrote a school DEI policy. And after this slide, I'm going to invite you guys to speak because I've been speaking long enough. So we'll have some conversation. A lot of schools focus on writing a policy and they are not acting while they're writing the policy. And so I really, and later on in this, I will talk about some things you can do while you're gathering data and while you're writing the policy that can actually encourage DEI. And the last thing that I want to give you are some tips for you and what I learned. As you can see, we didn't change systems, right? You don't see that there. You don't see a lot of the things that happened. If any of you were here when Cynthia did her presentation, right? They kind of revamped their whole school systems and approaches. I didn't do that. And the reason was because that wasn't the goal for us at the time. So some of the things that I wanted to, or one of the things that I really want to highlight to you is making sure your DEI policy is based on what you can do, not necessarily always what you want to do. Because a lot of times we want to go in and immediately change these systems. And like I said, we base it on a lot of times our own victimization, right? I would be lying if I said that there weren't times before I became DEI lead that I was victimized at my school. I was, right? Knowingly and unknowingly. There were things that happened to me, but I realized that that system had been in place for a long time. So to try to revamp that system as part of my DEI plan in 1 year would have been ludicrous, essentially. The second thing is, in your international schools, I want you to think about justice. As guests in a country, we really have to reframe what justice means versus being a citizen of a country, right? So if I'm in an American school and I'm an American, justice in that school context would totally look differently than in South Korea with me being a guest of the country and the needs of that particular school. So when you start thinking about your DEI journeys in your schools, you have to frame them and contextualize them based on your particular school. And this is some of the work that I do when I am advising leaders and consulting with schools, because we tend to take the Western ideologies of DEI and try to apply them to this school in Malaysia or this school in Nigeria. And honestly, when you have these Western approaches, it doesn't work a lot of times. And we have seen now where DEI approaches have actually done the opposite of what we want them to do. And we have leaders who are afraid of DEIJ, right? They're like, no, I don't want to stir this pot like this. So we really have to think about how we're framing our what justice means in our school community framework, okay? With that, now I want to have some conversations with you. And in the chat, I want you to answer this question. Would you prefer to be in small groups, or would you like to have a large group conversation? So put small group or large group, and I'm going to look at it. You can type it right now, and then we can move on. So would you like to have smaller group conversations, or would you prefer the larger group? And go, so that we can have some consensus here and kind of move on. All right, small group or large? I'm seeing large, I'm seeing small. Okay. All right. So what I'm seeing is mostly small and coming back to the large. That helps. Okay, so what we're going to do is that, and what I want you to do is look at the questions that I've asked. So I'm going to move on to how I infuse culture and climate into DEI and what that means. So if you could take a look at those questions whilst, that was very British of me, sorry, the whilst. I love it. I'm in the UK right now, and so I'm picking up a lot of the lingo. So while we're doing that, I am going to attempt to put you all in groups. And actually,
Sunny, I'm
yes,
sorry.
yes.
Before you do it, can you copy those questions and drop them in the chat, since we won't have this to reference if we need those for the groups?
It might be, would it be, it's easier on my end actually, because Zoom is not my thing. Would it be okay if you screenshot them? Is that easier for you, Adrian?
It's not, but I'll do it.
And I can type them up. I have them. I can type them up.
Okay, thank you. All right. Listen, I'm honest about my
before we
lack
go
of-
into
yes.
groups as well, Sunny, we have a couple of norms that we have that we were going to introduce later, but we can introduce them now. That's okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Kevin, did you want to pull up the norms?
Yep, I'll pull those up.
Great.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for those, Angeline, as well.
Okay, are you guys going to say them verbally or will they be in the chat? I just want clarity.
Kevin will, actually,
Okay.
I think I can share it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can share it. Perfect.
Okay.
So briefly for the norms, so ignore this task. We'll do this task later, but the norms are a step back, challenging yourself to listen by default and speak less, inviting everyone's voice is heard. Check in. Is this contribution about actively working to abolish white supremacy, or about taking the time to debrief and process our own personal growth and learning, and to process later? As soon as something is about yourself, maybe your own needs, especially when feeling defensive or unheard, remember that it is best to wait to process this later with other white people, if that applies to you. And these are developed by Darnell Fine from his anti-racist educator conference last year. So just to review that before going into breakout rooms. Whoops.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And I'm going to start the breakout rooms. There are a lot of us here, so we're going to do and are you guys getting the join?
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully I got that. Oh. Okay, so are they joining the rooms? Yes? No? I need to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Listen, I have been on, what is it called? The Google Meets for so many years that Zoom, I just get really like, what's happening here? I didn't do that because I've been out, my education teacher hat has been off for a minute. But what I do want is for you all to, I'm going to go back to the questions so that you guys can have them, and then we can discuss and share. And I'm just going to ask the first question and I'm going to say room 1, somebody from room 1 or room 2. I'm going to do this very informally, and I hope that's okay with you all. So let me share my screen here and then we can move right along. I know I have a lot going on my computer, guys. Don't worry about it. I'm going to fix that. Okay. So someone from room 1, the question is, can there be DEI implementation in a toxic climate? So if you were in room 1, if you could just unmute your mic, say your name and just start speaking. Room 1, do you remember which rooms you're at? Okay, no, okay. If anybody could just share from any room. Thank you.
I was trying to be quiet because I talk so dang on much. Y'all know every week I'm saying this. So I was giving space to my room, but they silent. So
thank you so much.
You know I got you, sis. So we kind of we had a great discussion about this question. It's the only question we had time to actually get to.
That's fine.
And we didn't even get through it. So we kind of talked about how it is difficult in those climates. We talked a lot about a lot of the barriers that exist in those climates. I had made a point but those are the places we need this stuff the most. And so like when we avoid those places, you're allowing those things to kind of continue. I use an analogy that then we've kind of rubbished through it a lot about you don't go into the shower when you're clean, you go in when you're dirty. And so thinking about that in the DEI space, but then there are a lot of things about some people don't know they stink. They didn't say that. I said that way because, that's how I am. They don't know they funky. They don't know they dirty. They don't know that they filled with trash to even get in the shower. They don't know there's a shower that exists. They don't know how to get to the shower. So there's all these other things that go back to the barriers that exist, but babies don't know they dirty. Their parents make sure they know. And so like sometimes like that's the work that we're doing. And then the last thing that I had just added at the end, it was just a really good conversation. So shout out to room 1. But the last thing I will add is I know there was a point about I tell people you ain't got to do nothing you don't want to do. Not everybody needs to be doing the work in toxic environments. Not everybody needs to be doing the work. Like DEI work looks so different for every person. Sometimes your DEI work is just being able to say you are who you are and show up and say what up though in a space like that is DEI work, and I think sometimes everybody thinks they have to be Darnell Fine or, Sonny or Kevin. And that's may not be your role in the revolution. So, and or the role you want, like if you want to sit in your anti-racist work is that you show up to work and do a good damn job, then that's what you do. All right. I know this is recorded. Maybe I shouldn't have cursed. My bad, y'all.
Thank you so much. One of the things that I appreciate about Adrienne is her authenticity and her being who she is in every single space that she walks into. And I appreciate that. I'm not going to necessarily answer the questions right now. I want to be able to discuss, at least for a minute, some of these. The second question, can someone answer it as well? Can there be DEI implementation? And it should have said without, but so let me correct that, without. Can there be DEI implementation without a defined culture? And when you answer yes, of course, I'm an educator, so we're not doing yes or no. When you answer yes, then expand upon that answer. Does anyone want to take that, or can someone take that?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Jashita, and we were actually in room 5, but we took the question as it was.
Yes, that's fine.
We took it as, can there be DEI implementations with a defined culture? And so one of the things that I said was that even like in my school, for example, I am trying to like get AIELOC involved more in my school. And so it's been a journey. It wasn't always easy, but it's going to be fine, I guess, because like at my school at like ISD, basically you have kind of like this tight culture, but then obviously change takes time. And so It's more about how much you're willing to bring that change and how much you're willing to put out there, as compared to just saying that, oh, I'm going to, like, implement this, but actually not having a plan towards it. So I feel like the most important thing is to know that you can get there if you have the will to do it, actually, sorry.
Absolutely. We will talk about culture, but schools have a defined culture, whether it's explicit or implicit, there is a defined culture. And with the school, that if you think about the organization that you're working in, can DEI be implemented within the context of that culture? Or do you have to break down the systems that have been created by the particular culture before you can implement DEI? Okay, so that's a question that I want you to think about. When I say without a culture, we're talking about schools that are happenstance, right? The schools that say we do have an ethos. And when you look, when you say, well, where is it? You go to the website and there are like 17 points of things that we are and things that we do. And it's convoluted and confusing. And so you don't really have a defined culture. So when you're thinking about DEI implementation, I want you to think about the culture of your particular entity, organization, school, and how does it fit within that culture? Okay, so I'm going to define climate and culture and what it includes, and we will talk about the last two. Now, let me go back really quickly. I'm going to answer these within one word and then I'll expand upon them later. Can there be DEI implementation in a toxic climate? Yes. Yes, there can be. And in my experiences in several schools, I've seen it actually happen. Can there be DEI implementation without with a defined culture? The answer is yes. We are going to define climate and culture. Here's the thing that's very important. What we like to do within DEI, what a lot of people like to do, because they like to, I'm trying to find a word, they like to delay the DEI implementation process. Let's collect data. We have to collect data. We have to do a survey. We have to do this. We have to do that. Let's write a plan. We are actually making something that is simplistically complicated, just complicated, right? There are some simple steps that you can take that can actually change and alter an organization without all of the doing all of the data. That's important. Absolutely, it's important, but that takes time. And there are things that you can do beforehand. You are in these schools, right? You have to begin to trust your own judgment as a DEI lead, as a leader within the school, as a principal who wants to do a DEI. You see where the problems are. And I don't know why we're so afraid to not wait on the data, right? There are some good things, and I'll talk to you about the simple, easy, great things that we can do before we implement. All right, so really quickly, define climate and culture. Climate is simple. Compare it to climate outside. It's how people feel, right? It's the shared beliefs that are cultivated that determine the feeling of the people within that community. And it happens accidentally, or it can happen intentionally. I bolded accidentally because a lot of schools have these accidental cultures and they are reactive, right, when problems occur, instead of being proactive and clearly defining the culture. And we'll talk about that. So what I want you to do is think about this. I don't want you to do this publicly, of course, because this is recorded, but I want you to think about a word, one word that characterizes the climate of your school, one word. Okay, you can write it, you can put it in your head, however, just one word. And the reason I do this, when I do this training, I say to people, I should be able to use one word to verbalize what the climate or the goal that we want in our school. It shouldn't be buried in 12,000 words. I shouldn't have to try to memorize 5 million things. If this is a school that goes from reception, I'm British school, sorry, goes from reception to year 13, American, kindergarten to year 12, what is the one word that every single person, every single child, every single staff member can use to define your climate? So think about that. If you're a school leader, you need to think about that and perpetuate that, okay? If you haven't already. The culture of your school, you can actually, when you think about the culture, what statement, phrase comes to mind? And I'm going to give you a moment to think about that as well. Is it something that everybody can articulate? Is it shared? Again, is it buried in some website? Is it authentic? Some people have a whole lot of phrases, that they use and they put them all over the doors, but it's not authentic. Okay. All right. So this is usually defined by the feeling of the various people of the organization in the school. When the organization is truly committed, there's a clear metric that you're using when you're talking about the climate, the culture of your school. And sometimes we conflate them because we say climate and culture, right? The climate is how you feel. The culture is who you are. Very simple. Climate, how you feel. Culture, who you are. When you put those together, that's essentially what your school is, right? And a lot of people don't really measure their climate and culture very often. You should be doing those check-ins very clearly. So when I am anti-bully trained, I did it years ago and we went through months of training. So one of the things that I do for schools as well is I can walk in and see levels of bullying that a lot of people don't see. And when I see that, then I can start to determine the climate of the school, right? How people are feeling, right? A lot of times when we look at bullying, we look at the children. I don't. I look at how the teachers interact with teachers, how the teachers interact with students, and how the leadership interacts with teachers. The last thing I look at is the students. If you have a problem with student bullying, it's probably because they're modeling what they see from the leadership. But that's something that leaders don't really want to kind of contend with, right? Because it puts a mirror on them. Also, a lot of times it's not the leader's fault because they're new, right? It's a culture. It's a culture that existed, okay? So again, I don't want to get into my climate and culture training, but this is some of the things that we do, or I do, not we. All right. And next. Okay, so here are some common misconceptions, and I want you to read them. And after you read them, I'm going to give you like a minute to read them. And I promise you, this is the second to last slide. I'm going to give you a minute to read them. And I want you to choose one or two that stand out to you. I apologize for the highlights being there, but those are some of the things that I tend to focus on, and I'll explain why. But I want you to read them all. And just one that sticks out to you, I want us to share. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, loosely. Okay, so that's loosely, very loosely, 30 seconds. These statements are so random, so please don't, like, do they go together in some way? They actually don't. And these are some common misconceptions. These are things that people have said in relation to climate and culture, and I will bring it all together with DEI momentarily. But can I have 3 people just who haven't spoken today, please unmute your mic, say your name, and then tell me which one stood out to you. And don't be shy. Some of you, I know, are not public speakers, but help me out. Help me out. Don't be that class.
Code switching doesn't exist. That one
Okay.
stood out to me.
Can you tell us who's talking for those of us?
Oh,
who
sorry,
don't-
my name is Chike.
Okay.
Chikezie or Chike Nadi. I'm based in Geneva. I'm a classroom teacher at Ecolant, which is the International School of Geneva. I have my 3-year-old in front of me, so I may not be able to speak as long as I'd like.
That's fine. Can you tell me why that's stuck out to you? Why that resonated?
I guess it's because it's something I constantly do.
Okay.
And some people just don't realize that it's happening, obviously, and they don't notice the different worlds that I may navigate through or I have navigated through in my life. So, but that's, yeah, I guess maybe that's personal for me.
Thank you. And I will, after the third person talks, I will talk about how this relates to culture and climate. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
2 other people, one more, the next person, just unmute and say your name. And
I'll go.
thank you. Say your name.
I'm Cheryl Ann.
Thank you.
I would say number 3, which
Okay.
is if 94% of the community that surveyed said they're happy, that's reflective of a positive climate. And I'll tell you why that one stood out for me, because in a lot of schools that I've worked in, a lot of times they will say it when you, because I tend to speak up a lot, they'll say, well, you're the only one who's saying that. And especially as the counselor, because what happens a lot of times is teachers will come and tell us things and then say, well, can you go and talk to the principal? And so then when we go and say, hi, we've talked to some people, this is what's portrayed, they'll say, well, we haven't heard anybody say that. You're the only one that's ever said that. You know, so it's almost like, even if I was the only one, does that mean it's not true?
Thank you so much. Does that mean it's not true? Or does that mean that it's not important? Or does that mean that it shouldn't be recognized? Absolutely. So we have to move away from this idea of majority rules, right? That's counteractive to the work of DEI, because what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone is included and feels a sense of belonging. And so we can't just say 94% of the people are happy and the rest of you, we have to learn how to disaggregate the data. One more.
Hi, I'm Loretta. I'm calling from Germany, and number 15 stuck out to me. It's too difficult. And the reason I chose too difficult is because I feel like it encompasses a whole bunch of things, like you can't train the parents, like 94% are happy, you can't make 100% happy. And like, it's just so big. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to, again, look at the things that we can do, having a growth mindset, right? And not also, as a Black woman, as a Black American woman, I cannot approach DEI in an international realm based on me and my experiences. I have to think about my demographic and what I can do. Not, again, going back, not what I want to do, right? Because I want to change the system and everybody is equal tomorrow, right? That's not realistic. We have to start being realistic with ourselves, because when we're not realistic with ourselves and the things that we do, it causes, now we're going to start having some self-care issues or some mental, it's going to affect our mental, capacity to remain positive, right? We're going to have these issues because we just can't do it. So do what you can. And I'm going to talk about that. Code switching. I wanted to speak about that. Kids can definitely behave at home one way, behave at school another way, and behave at the mall another way. When I say code switching, I'm not just talking about language, I'm talking about behaviors. So don't say kids can't. They can't, this is not it's not their culture to say good morning. If you have decided that in your school, good morning is a norm, yeah, they can. And then they'll readjust back to whatever they do at home. So please don't limit children because you might be limited, right? I wanted to, the long process, it's difficult, bully training, the ones I highlighted, and I'm going to just kind of go through some of these quickly. Bully training, please get bully training, anti-bully training. It is not a week. Part of the difficulty in implementing DEI is climate and culture, and a big negative aspect of some climate and cultures are bullying, and it happens leader, teacher, teacher, teacher a lot of times. And so DEI implementation is virtually impossible. It also happens teacher, student, right? And so we have to take care of those things. So I wanted to really just kind of end with, in this portion with, so this is just a brief introduction to what I do in terms of climate and culture. If a climate and culture overall is toxic, right, you cannot change the systems. I can tell you that now. Systemic change is not going to happen in a toxic environment. However, you can positively impact that community, right? So your goal at that point is not to change systems, but to impact the community positively. How can you do that? I did Diversity Week. That's really, really easy. It's like an international day. And if you want to know more, you can get with me on LinkedIn. There's also a YouTube video. You can go to NLCS Jeju YouTube channel and look up Diversity Week. And we have videos just to kind of give you an idea. Ambassadors came in and spoke about diversity. So we had the UK deputy ambassador come in, and because his parents were immigrants, he was able to talk about what it meant to be British, and I think he was Pakistani as well. So do the things that bring people together, right? Through kind of social events or school events, things like that. Also, you can't change systems overnight. So I want you to start thinking about backward designing and how you are backward designing your DEI journey. Again, making sure to emphasize that your health is important. If you're consistently hitting walls over and over and over again, it's going to become frustrating, right? So do the things that you know that you can do and have a positive impact. Ultimately, if you have positively impacted those children, you have made a difference, right? You have to be able to come away with that. All right. So again, if you or your team or your leaders want more in-depth culture and climate training and how that aligns with DEI, you know where to reach me. LinkedIn is the best place. Lastly, sorry for taking so much time. I'm putting together a conference that is South Korean based, but it's going to be online. And the title, as you can see, is Guiding Global Change Makers, Maximizing Student Success Through Parent and Teacher Engagement. And this conference will be for the parents. The reason I'm sharing this here, I know most of you aren't in South Korea, but think about your conferences empowering parents. We have conferences for teachers, we have conferences for students, but we don't have conferences that really help the parents to understand what we're doing as international schools. So that's kind of what I'm doing in the conference. If you want more, but we're doing things like which international school is best for your particular child, how to choose an international school, what will my child do with this English after they have learned, K through 12 in English? What happens when my child comes back, or if my child has to come back to South Korea? Learning the code switching aspect, because a lot of the parents do send their children to Western countries and they come back home because now they have to operate as someone who was marginalized and operate as someone who is now in number minority. So again, and thanks to Kevin and AIELOC, they are partnering with this venture. So again, if you're in South Korea, or if you're interested in helping or being a part, you've worked in South Korea and you want to be a part, just let me know. This will be in February. So with that, if I'm going to open the floor up just 1 minute or two, if you have any questions, if anyone has any questions, and then I'm going to let the meeting continue. Any
Thank
questions?
you so much, Sunny. It's Rama.
Sunny?
Dana
Yes.
is asking about the time, if it's 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Just double checking on that.
Oh, yes, it's 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's going to be Korean Standard Time. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah,
you.
yep. Thank you for catching that. Any other questions? No. Okay, so I will wrap up. Thank you for this time. Again, any of you can reach me on LinkedIn. That's just the best way to get with me for any questions about any of this. And thank you for your time. And I'm going to pass this back over to Kevin. Thank you all so much and have a great Saturday.
Thank you, Sunny. Let's give her some virtual love. And I'm gonna turn it over to Justin. Thank you so much.
So can y'all hear me okay? Got it. All right. So if you're interested in what's coming up soon at AIELOC, feel free to check out this link tree. Kevin, is the link tree linked on the website, or can someone link it in the chat? That would be awesome. Oops. So that has a list of a ton of different resources you can check out, and oh great, thanks Kevin. With also, and it's updated frequently, so it's just like a one-stop shop for any quick questions you have. I use it often for Zoom links and flyers and dates and things like that. So definitely check that out and bookmark it. It's saved me a lot of time in asking questions. Anyway, anything else to add, Kevin? I think that's it.
Let's see. Reed, Tulika, Fandy, anything upcoming? I want to just have them hop in here quick.
Yeah.
Can you let me share the screen, Kevin?
Okay, yep, you can now.
Continue. Okay, so here. So yeah. So first of all, thank you so much to everyone, and particularly the AIELOC members. A while back, I sent a form. Everything regarding the continuum is been sort of it's been nurtured here in the AIELOC space. So a while back I sent a form. So who was just to see how much building capacity we have here in AIELOC. And some of you have filled up the form and told me what were your strengths and what workshops you were doing and everything. And since in the AIELOC continuum we have two purposes, a twofold purpose of, on the one side, illustrating the progress of international schools through the milestones and the stamps, and on the other side, supporting schools in that continuous journey. So this year, what we're going to do, I'm going to continue to reach out to those who filled out the form. I haven't gotten to everyone, but I'll share it again. Where is it? Let me find the link and copy it here. So for AIELOC members, before I tell you what's coming up now, I'm lost with the window. Here is the link to that form for AIELOC members. And so this is what's coming up now this year in regards to building capacity and for schools. And a way for them to plot the progress along the AIJ continuum. Today, we have seen how we've seen and we have evidence in the school, the feeling that is so complex, right? That there is so much to work on, but there is a way of going through that process. And every school in every context is in a different journey, in a different context, in a different stage of growth. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So you can plot that progress along the continuum. So this is what's coming up. In October, continuing with lovely Katrina, we are offering training for leaders, and not only senior leaders, but also middle leaders, creating a positive climate and culture conducive of AIELCO. Then we have with NION as well, literacy and intercultural competence through mindful self-inquiry. In February, we'll be diving, so we're moving along as well in terms of like pedagogies. We were talking about decolonizing pedagogies and how can that, humanizing pedagogies and how can that take form. So cultural linguistically responsive pedagogy with Rama and Ceci. And in March, we have lovely Justin here with teaching and learning, applying intersectionality in the classroom. And in April, we have Dominic with fostering critical consciousness in global citizenship education. And the way this makes sense is like, as you, when I explain about the continuum has standards and no standards and practice. The indicators are capacity building, attitudes, dispositions, say that we can evidence in school. So through engaging in building capacity for leaders, teachers, and people with key responsibility roles, that's what schools can progress in the continuum. So yeah, that's what's coming up with regard to the continuum. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Awesome, thanks, Fandy. Yeah. Reed, I'm going to talk about the book club.
Reed, I think you're muted.
Yes, I thought I unmuted, but I did not. Yeah, next Sunday, hold on. Let me share quickly. I just had up the, okay. 25th of September at 8 a.m. Eastern time, which is a little bit earlier than last time. Hopefully, folks in East Asia, it's a little less late in the evening for you. We will be talking about the second part of Leah Lakshmi Pitsna Samarasina's care work, Dreaming Disability Justice. We had a nice conversation last time. Looking forward to seeing folks and chatting again next weekend. Thank you, Rama, for sharing the link. If you want to sign up, it's right there in the chat. We would love to.
Awesome. Thanks, Reed.
And tomorrow is also Self-Care Sunday for BIPOC educators. So you can sign up for that at the link tree. There's information for that. I believe it's 9 a.m. Eastern time, but the link is in the link tree with that information. And lastly, the upcoming conference for AIELOC and the Women of Color and ELT. The virtual conference is coming up November 12 and 13. I know, Sunny, it's amazing. I went last year and it was incredible. It's a 2-day virtual conference, and definitely sign up. Was the most magnificent thing I've ever attended last year. So I would highly recommend it, and it's focused on representation, justice, anti-racism, and equity in international schools. And with that being said, Kevin, you want to close us out?
Yeah, we'll close out. If there are any sort of final reflections, you can share them or come off mute and feel free to share. Like Justin said, we suggest folks go to Linktree. We have a lot of stuff coming up this month from SWANA, DEIJ Leader Session coming up. Advocacy Circle with Sherilyn coming up, lots of things coming up. Thanks, Shireen. Talk about the Fast Pass. That's another option if you want access to everything. You don't have to worry about individual things. A lot of confidence in us for the conference. It's going to be pretty good this year. We'll announce who's speaking soon. You'll find out who those folks are. And again, October, you're going to be in Geneva. We look forward to meet you face to face. If you can't make it, we will again, you'll hear more and more about the collaboration between ECOLE, IB, ECIS, and AIELOC. But we'll give you the virtual floor before we close out. And anyone who wants to hang out, Katrina said, let's have a networking space. So if folks want to network based on where you're at geographically and things of that nature, just let us know. Yep, Angie, I got you. What's the name? I'll take that. I saw that note. Thanks for that, Heather. Thanks, Fanny, put in that email address. Thanks, Erica. Shireen's over here saying, come to her school. They're looking for a director general. I love that. Anything else you want to add? Hey, Nayang, anything you want to hop in here and add? Pulling her in. I saw her come back in. You're good.
Just that we had a mini community visiting here. So thank you for this community.
Definitely. All right, folks, if nothing else, we will, October, we're live in Geneva. November, we're conference. So the next community visioning will be in January. And we will be joined by Cynthia Roberson. She'll be with us in January. Thank you all again for the space, for showing up, for being you, for everything you do. Again, our expectation with this group is that go forth, but go forth with a change in mind. So whatever, I love how Katrina said, thinking about backwards and thinking about her recently, Africa Mills talking about being pro-human and thinking about visualizing what we want the ecosystem to be. Part of that is looking in the mirror and knowing our role that we play. All right, if you're gonna want to hang out. We do a little bit of networking, but if you gotta go, we understand. Thank you for joining us. Reach out if you need anything, and we'll see you all soon.
Before they leave, guys, remember, this is a lot of people. Connect with folks. Connect with, look, this is your community. So don't leave without connecting with 5 or 6 or 10 people, whether it's on LinkedIn or emails or whatever. Email each other privately. Don't be alone in this. Don't be alone. That's all. I'm done. I promise.
If you feel you're alone, email us. We're gonna pull you somewhere. There's a place and space for you. Good to see you, Marianne. Good to see everybody. Loretta, I've heard you're coming to Geneva. Who else is coming to Geneva? Jane, you're coming to Geneva, right? Yes, I need to meet you in person. Good to see everyone. Aiko, good to see you all. Tanisha, good to see you. All right. You want to hang out, hang on out? I'm throwing my alphabet back on. So what's the name? Wait to see who's still here.
Take care.
Start to connect. Thank you all.
Thanks,
good to see you. Hey, Evan.
Kevin, you're gonna be in Geneva then.
Of course I'm gonna be there. I wouldn't miss Geneva for the protocols. I would not miss Geneva for anything.
I'm gonna cry when I finally get to see all of you. I honestly might. I'm very sensitive.
Yeah. So backstory of the task force, Joel knows this. Joel and I talked about this task force a couple of years ago. So this isn't just, if anyone was not clear, AIELOC is really over this task force. Like it's ECIS, AIELOC, but it's really, so that's why we're like, come on to Geneva, as many as can come. We understand if you cannot come, we will keep everyone updated. Oh yeah, I will do that. Thanks, Ron. Like, stop